sometimes we label it as trauma until God shows us and pours the light onto the situation, and we get to see, whoa, like what a miracle that actually was. All right, by the end of this episode, you will be able to understand what is keeping you trapped in the past, and also gain clarity on what a miracle moment is. So that way you can recognize all the miracle moments happening and that have happened in your God-given life. Okay, so I started Miracle Moment a long time ago. This podcast has been around. It has some different seasons. I've had different parts of myself turn online that I've taken offline, the whole journey of what true transformation is about. And I recognize that I really haven't talked about what a miracle moment is in a long time. So I wanted to circle back to some frequently asked questions that I get around miracle moments. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of just roll through the frequently asked questions and share what it really looks like as someone who has walked through so many miracles, so that you can really self-identify the miracles in your life. Because oftentimes what I think happens is we actually don't put the experiences we've had into the bucket of miracles. And so you might just kind of separate yourself as someone who has, one time experienced a miracle, or that's for those other types of people, and you're not, someone who's been blessed with miracles. Or maybe you're someone who has seen a lot of miracles, but they haven't happened in your own life. So I just want to break it down, okay? So this is going to be a really fun kind of like rapid fire type episode. So number one, how do I know if what happened to me really was a miracle moment or not? And here's what I would say. The episode that I did, the last solo episode, was all about the mental loop replays that can happen when you've gone through something. It usually is something sort of on the traumatic scale, and that could be, little t versus big T, trauma. And when something lives on that, it can sometimes get into this brain pattern of repeat. And so whether that is in just your daily thoughts, whether that just shows up in your dream space, and, that can be slightly frustrating, slightly annoying, distracting, right? There's a lot of words we could use for that. But here's the thing is you have to self-identify if what you went through was a miracle or not. And sometimes we label it as miracle before we actually understand what was so miraculous about it. Sometimes we label it as trauma until God shows us and pours the light onto the situation, and we get to see, whoa, like what a miracle that actually was. And sometimes it's like way after the fact when you look back and you look at your past timeline and you see all the dots line up, and how you wouldn't be experiencing the goodness of what you have right now, even if it's just a part or a section of your life, right? You wouldn't be actually experiencing that if XYZ didn't happen. So a few different ways that you can understand whether it was a miracle or not, but it's really your choice. So just like when I first started kind of diving into Christianity, I remember something I would say was like, well, how are we supposed to know what is real or not? So I would rather sit with the people that are full of faith and smiling and laughing, rather than being in the group of people that are pessimistic and are really just kind of like down and out. And so, it literally was that basic in the beginning when I didn't really understand the depths of Christianity or anything. I just sort of saw these two different groups of people. I'm like, they just operate differently. And so if both are even fake, then I'm going to go sit with the people that look like they're having fun. So it can be something that you make up. It can be something that you decide, or it can really be something that you've already walked through deeply and God has really shown you what is the capital T truth of the situation. And that's when you can kind of define your miracle moment for yourself. Let's go into question number 2. What's the difference between trauma and a breaking point that leads to purpose? So yeah, that's a big question in itself. Like I said, there's little t trauma and big T trauma. That meaning little t trauma are like little things that maybe someone else wouldn't define as trauma, but for you, it really did make this lasting imprint on your self-image or your beliefs about yourself, others in the world, or God, those types of things. Big T trauma are those huge ones, the ones where you're like, whoa, that's really intense. You may or may not share them publicly, that type of thing. But there is definitely I think sometimes people try to categorize their trauma and say, well, mine was this and yours is that. And that was just a breaking point. But after having a podcast and doing over 400 episodes, interviewing so many guests and talking about miracle moments, I can tell you this one thing. It could be whatever your level of tolerance is. So for me, I'm sort of and have always been a pretty extreme person. I grew up doing extreme sports, skydiving, mountain biking, rock climbing, like all the intense things. So when I actually think about the big miracle moments that like really got me to stop what I was doing and do something different, I think God knew me well enough to say, I'm going to kind of give her something a little big and intense. But I've also interviewed some incredible people and leaders and founders of big movements making huge change. And they can actually look back and see that their miracle moment where it all began was maybe just this little breaking point, maybe a time where they stumbled and fell on their face and recognized that they didn't want to do something the way that they had always been doing it. Maybe it was one time they got just a little bit sick. They didn't have cancer or leukemia, but like it was the way that it happened or the circumstances that made it really impactful for them, even though if you heard the story, you'd be like, oh, okay. So I would say there's actually not much of a difference other than how you self-label it. Again, it's really about your perspective on your own story. So are you going to take that trauma and turn it into a purpose? Are you going to take that breaking point and turn it into purpose? Or are you going to just let it be what it was and kind of close that door and look forward? If you're loving this conversation and it's sparking something inside of you, maybe it's time to share your own voice with the world. That's exactly why we created the Podcast Accelerator, to help leaders like you go from hidden to heard with a podcast that connects, inspires, and actually grows your business. We launched together in just a few months, and you'll have the system, support, and strategy to keep scaling and growing. Doors are open now, so the link to apply is in the show notes. We cannot wait to see you in there. A lot of people do that last option because they just want to move on, and I get that. And the Bible talks about keeping your gaze forward. And I just want to say, if there is a repeating cycle, and go back to that episode if you do fit in this category, because if there's a repeating cycle happening, then there might be something a little bit more that God wants you to get out of that past experience, so that way your future can be even more bright and aligned with His good plan for your life. Okay, let's move into the next one. Why do I feel guilty for wanting something more after everything I've been through? So this is a big one. I've definitely experienced this where it was over a decade ago. I had my near-death suicide attempt. And on the other side of that, it was such a miracle. I realized life was precious. And so it was really weird when there was a certain point where I was like, okay, I understood that how life is so precious, but why am I now feeling, I'm not like suicidal, but I'm just feeling either complacent or I'm feeling discontent. I'm wanting way more, even though God has already promised me everything, but I just, right? And so I just want to neutralize that and say, even if you've been through big miracle moments and you've understood them completely, feeling guilty for wanting something more might actually just be God's way of trying to get your attention on something new that He's doing in your life. And so I would just do that sort of prayer check where you ask yourself, like, are these desires coming from me, or is God planting this desire in my heart? Because if He's planting a desire in your heart of something bigger, grander, more impactful, then lean into that and ask Him and understand why and where that's coming from, because there could be something really big on the other side of it. And if the desire is totally coming from yourself, kind of go a little bit deeper into why, and does that align with God's plan? Sometimes it actually does. And so, it's like, well, let me see how I can still serve God, and maybe that will get resolved. But if it doesn't and it leads you down a different path, then okay, well, it actually comes down into obedience at that point. All right, let's go into the next one. How do I stop feeling like a victim of my circumstances? Now, this is why I love the phrase miracle moment, because it does just that. It takes a circumstance of something that maybe someone else could see the story of, and it really allows you to be part of God's experience of really being the potter and being able to shape your reality. Because if you just take an old story and you just shape it into you being the victim, you will live that out. And the issue is that you will continue to live that out and you will continue to attract those types of experiences. And so making a conscious decision to get out of the victim mindset can be so life-changing, even just in your prayer life. If you are coming to God as a victim, there's so much that you're actually missing, and there's a piece of the fruitfulness of your faith that is not going to get lit on fire. God wants us to be lit on fire, so excited, so just eager to hear from him and to be walking with him. And so when you can really step out of being that victim of your past circumstances, God can then use you. God can use that energy. So if you're feeling stuck, it's simple, bring it to his feet, right? There might be all the books and all the courses and all of that, and you can check that out. But when it comes down to it, I've experienced it firsthand where I've felt stuck. And it's truly a surrender, recognizing that God is the one in control, and God, use me. I'm a broken vessel. Take this past experience and just shape me into who you want me to be. Help me see what I'm missing from this story. And it's amazing what God will amplify and highlight, sometimes even through other people when we ask him to show up in that type of way. All right, next one. What does it mean? Aren't these fun? These are cool. All about miracle moments. And we'll do a few more episodes on really diving into the depths of miracle moments and the beliefs that come with it, the beliefs that help really spark on new miracles, the way that you can see more miracles in your life, all of that fun stuff. All right, so what does it mean to rebuild your identity, and where do I even start? So love this question because it takes me down my previous path of just really wanting and desiring to rewire myself and my identity. And it was so deeply intertwined with the personal development space that has so much good and yet can sort of distort something that God has given us, which is our identity in Jesus Christ, in him. And just knowing that at the core of it, I am his daughter. I am his beloved. And you can even just close your eyes and ask him, like, God, what do you call me? And when I did this just recently, I heard him say, my angel. And I was like, wow, like I'm so moved. And I also heard him say, you're my daughter. Is that enough? And so I just want to leave that here because really that's where our identity stems from. So if you ever feel like you need to rebuild a part of your identity, you can really just circle back to who does God say I am and let go of trying to build it yourself. All right, we have a few more, but I'm going to wait for them on the next episode. I pray that you just take these questions, you ask them to yourself, journal them yourself, and see what God wants to highlight to you about miracles.
Thanks for listening to Miracle Moment. Share the episode, hit follow, and join us every Thursday for prayer and activation. For more tools to rise into your God-given mission, visit rayireland.com. See you next week.